It is the Anfield Wrap. I am Neil Atkinson and we are here in association with Peloton. They have renewed their partnership with us, along with being the official cardio and strength partner of Liverpool Football Club and the official digital fitness partner as well. And what they're looking to do with this partnership with us is to talk about the many, many ways in which you can use Peloton and become a member. And you can use it both for the Bike Plus, for the tread, and in a number of different ways over the course of this, year, but also for much of your life. It's very much designed around people, a world of workouts personalised to get you to your goals, customised routines and structured programming on premium hardware. Last season, I was on the Peloton for a show after Liverpool won the league. I made that promise, and I think we'll find Ian Ryan I delivered.
You did, mate. I was on the show. It was great.
I was distracting for everyone.
Little bit.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the sheer level of attraction that you must have felt towards me whilst I was physically exerting myself, it wouldn't have helped matters. So this season, I've made, I don't know if you heard last week, but I've committed that if the top of Christmas, I'll do one of the post-Christmas shows on the Peloton. So if Liverpool are top on Christmas Day, I will be doing that. That is indeed motivation for everyone, especially the Reds.
Every chance as well. Every chance it happens.
That's the plan. Listen, last year we also did Anfield to Istanbul as well, and there is the Tour Peloton Club hashtag before that, all one word. You can find out everything that you would need in amongst all of that, and do let us know if you're using it for other purposes other than just the bike, strength, yoga, meditation, stretching courses as well. It's all on there, and you can get on it all through Peloton. A number of different ways to do that, and we are very, very pleased to be partnering with them over the course of the rest of the season. And yes, we'll check back in at Christmas and see how we're all getting on. I've got with me Ian Ryan, as you've already heard. I've got Adam Melia and I've got Andy Bell. Andy, you were at the game yesterday. You got back quick, good on you. It was emphatically the cliche of a game of two halves with a little bit of a portion of penalties at the end. There's a lot to be excited about, I think, especially first half. I think it'll take a serious low block to stop this Liverpool team. I think the idea your way home against Liverpool is just to defend the penalty area. I think that might be under real threat.
Totally. The interplay between the front four was absolutely sumptuous at times, wasn't it? The technical quality that all four of those had, it was just an absolute joy to watch. And it's worth noting first half that we actually don't create many clear-cut chances in terms of getting a shot away, but there's a lot of times where, for example, the one where Gakpo's breaking and it's 5v1 and he plays the right pass but it hits the back of Kamara and it's all just a little bit unlucky. But there were a couple of times where if that ends in a goal, that could be goal of the season or team goal of the season. That's the level of how good it was. And we all know Florian Wirtz is a fantastic footballer with an outstanding touch, but Ekitike, we're seeing week on week now with every one of his performances that he is just a really elegant, intelligent footballer. And obviously on either side, Gakpo I don't think is a good game yesterday, but even at times he links up with those two really, really well. And if things click just a little bit more, we could have 2 or 3 goals in that first half. Obviously, the concern is, as we come on to talk about, once Ekitike goes off the pitch, it doesn't work. Crystal Palace push up 10 yards, and we don't have that same thing. Wirtz goes from playing in between the lines to being one of the lines, and that just doesn't work in any way, shape or form. So we do need to address that, and we can't be reliant on Ekitike being fit or firing all season. But there's loads there to be positive about, as well as some things ultimately to be negative about as well.
Yeah, I want to come on to deal with more of the positives. We'll talk about Ekitike, Wirtz, Frimpong and Kerkez in a few minutes, Ian. But then, let's do the second half. And you could see legitimate concerns. I agree with Andy in terms of as soon as you take Ekitike off, it allows Palace to have so much more ability to control space through the game and the profit from that as well. Also, I just don't think after that point, Liverpool passed between the lines particularly well. Did they miss Gravenberch? Did they miss Trent Alexander-Arnold, frankly? But they had McAllister in that period. Or did they miss the player to pass to? It's one of those where the truth's probably all in the middle. But second half, it really was not very good from Liverpool, especially post 60 minutes.
No, it wasn't great. You're always caught, I think, between a couple of stools with pre-season because you don't want to go too hard on them because it is all about working towards something. And it's the same for every team. If you go online and look at what other fans are saying about their own club, there's always a bit of a mixed bag of some good stuff, some bad stuff, some things we need to improve on. So exactly the same for us, and you wouldn't expect it to be perfect. Not so more in the captain's performance where it was just a bit mad, really. Now, if you want to be kind, you might say, well, I'm still recovering from an illness, or maybe it was just one of those bad days at the office. By the time you get to next Friday, it'll all be fine, it'll have sorted itself out. But it was a real reminder that whilst Liverpool have been I would say, great in the market so far in terms of what's come in. I think they've done really smart business in terms of what's gone out as well. There is a need just to supplement what's there with another 2 or 3 additions if possible, just to give everyone the best possible chance. But as you said at the very start of this, loads and loads of things to be positive about. I mean, it's going to be an absolute joy watching Florian Wirtz play football week in, week out. An absolute joy. He is some footballer. And I think when you sign someone like that, you've got you get a sense of what you might be getting, but until you see him in the flesh, until you see him kind of every single week, you don't really understand just how good he is in those kind of tight spaces. Everyone's trying to find him. You wouldn't be surprised if he gets a ton of man of the match performances next season. If in doubt, just give it to Florian, because he is that level of footballer. I thought Ekitike was brilliant, and it'll be interesting to see, at his tender age of 23, whether he can kind of produce that every single week. It might take him a little bit of time, but in terms of the glimpses we've had so far, you can't fail to be impressed. I think his touch was at times out of this world. He looked brilliant in terms of just being able to take it in. His goal's fantastic. I love the goal because he almost makes it look easy, but it's not, because he sets himself up perfectly to give himself the angle to then bend it into the far corner. It's a brilliant finish. And again, the interplay between Wirtz and him was excellent, and it wasn't the first time or the last time you saw that. So yeah, 1 or 2 negatives second half, absolutely, but loads of positive first half.
The other thing that struck me was I felt that Paris Saint-Germain was in Crystal Palace's mind at times, the way in which they tried to sort of smother Liverpool from playing in a couple of ways. When we went to Paris last season, it's the most, and listen, they're going to become champions of Europe. Most teams can't do that. In first half, Crystal Palace couldn't stop Liverpool either. Second half, though, that problem that has been there from time to time under the Arne Slot's Liverpool, this problem of how is it that we are going to get out? How is it that we are going to play when the pressure comes on? I thought that first half, Liverpool very much dealt with Palace trying to do that, and second half, they very much didn't, Adam.
Yeah, I think that in terms of the sort of the things that we've tried to fix this summer, that's definitely got to be in the manager's mind, hasn't it? How was it that the most effective team stopped us last season? And, a lot of that, if you're sort of talking about where we thought the new signings were going to get us, our worry, I suppose, was what was going to happen without Trent. And I didn't really think that I didn't feel that it was a huge factor yesterday. I didn't feel like he was particularly missed. I felt like Frimpong has hit the ground running and looks like he's going to be really good and really dangerous. And actually on a gutter, I think I was saying that I suspected Ekitike might be the one who's the project of the signings. It doesn't seem to be the case. I think it was clear from the noises coming out of training when they were in the Far East that everybody was really super impressed with how he looks straight away, and he just has hit the ground running. I've got no issue with him leading the line for Liverpool in these competitive games. I'm excited about it, actually. Loved his goal and loved the link up there. Wirtz, I think we've said everything. The one I guess I'm slightly concerned about in terms of both his sort of performance and how it sort of fitted in with the team, and in a few ways was Kirkez, and I do think there's something to do with Virgil's performance that's linked to the fact that was on the same side. I just sort of had it in my head that Virgil was a bit worried about him. That he wasn't sure where he was. In the same way that Konate used to cover a load of ground for Trent, I felt like that had sort of switched yesterday, and Konate didn't need to be everywhere. Frimpong has got pace to burn, and he seemed to be able to be at both ends of the pitch. Whereas Virgil, for me, I just had it in my head that he was a bit worried. In general, I'm not. I didn't really think about PSG, and I do have this as a pre-season game. So what you want from a charity shield, ideally, you want to look amazing. You want to go out there and roll somebody like we did against Chelsea in the Millennium Stadium. That's the only one I remember really where we've been brilliant. If not, then you want moments, I think. And so the same as pre-season in general. I thought there's enough moments there. From Wirtz and the people he was linking in with, especially, that just is absolutely mouth-watering. I mean, yeah, an incredible prospect.
I want to sort of get into it more, but let's do the thing that happens pre-match first and foremost. Andy said before you were there, the disruption of the silence. It's obviously pretty disappointing. The thing I'll say is, having been around football crowds and seen what was said by a lot of people who support Crystal Palace post-match on social media, and a couple who even texted me, there's one of these things here where it only takes a few, and then the next thing that happens is everyone's trying to tell the few to shut up. But that you don't know that. The television microphones don't know, you know what I mean? And this stuff can sort of spiral. So obviously it is disappointing. I think the ref does the right thing, but there's enough going on in the world without sort of becoming unspeakably angry about it.
I think so. It is important to note that it is disgusting and abhorrent what happened. Diogo Jota's family will be watching that. They will have been affected by what happened, and I do think that...
Can you tell me what happened, Andy?
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I find Wembley really disorientating. So I thought, watching it on the telly, Wembley, you can't really tell what's going on sometimes. It'll be people in the concourse. So I don't know what happened. From someone who was there, can you tell me?
Yes, I've seen that as an explanation as well. So normally what happens in a minute's silence is it takes a few people a couple of seconds to finish their conversations or whatever it is, or understand what's going on, and then there's a minute's silence. I do feel like in recent years it's become like not more acceptable to disrupt a minute's silence, but it's just happening a little bit more. It feels like, maybe I'm misremembering, but 10-15 years ago that was just something that didn't happen, whereas it's happened to us a couple of times recently, which is slightly concerning. So people said that there was booing. I didn't hear any booing. It's a strange thing. I was walking up and down Wembley. Well, I was walking up Wembley Way to the game, and the Palace fans do this thing where they shout Eagles, but the E is really elongated, and it sounds a little bit like a boo. So that's what I heard from their end. Was the like Eagles shout? Whether it was from the concourse, whether it was from their actual end supporters, I'm not entirely sure. But then exactly what you said happens. Few people tell them to shut up. Few from our end. You can hear a few from their end. It doesn't stop. And then there's booing from our end, obviously, towards them, and then the ref does the right thing. I think I saw a Palace fan online say that his take on what happened was that there was a little bit of disruption getting in. People were getting in late, and people were walking into the ground not understanding what was going on.
Yeah.
Which is quite a plausible explanation, because I was outside Wembley and I've never seen it that bad getting in. I was waiting 20 minutes. I've never had to wait that length of time, and I was there an hour before the game. So that is quite possible. And like you say, it only takes a few. The nature of a minute's silence is that one or two people doing that disrupts the entire thing. And the reaction I've seen from Crystal Palace fans online is exactly what you'd expect from them. I've been to Selhurst Park a couple of times. I've been to many, many games at Anfield where Crystal Palace have come. Their supporters are brilliant. They sing about their own team. They're very polite, welcoming, hospitable when you go down there. And the other thing I would say is Selhurst Park is a 25,000 capacity. Their allocation's 30,000 yesterday. So there's at least 5,000 people there who don't go regularly, who don't know how to act as a Crystal Palace supporter. And I think the Crystal Palace fans, like you see online, like the ones in the ground, reject that, and those people won't be in Selhurst Park this season. And if they are in acting like that, they won't be welcome. So it's no indictment on Palace supporters whatsoever. It's a few idiots. It's a real shame. And it's happening a little bit more often than you would like when minute silences at the minute.
Yep, no, I think that's very, very fair. I want to move on and talk about Ekitike, Adam. You said before about being impressed and feeling as though you worried he could be a project, and as you say, very much just wasn't. What I liked actually about the performance was there was tons of solidity. It was, in tons of ways, I think the brief, we've wondered what does the manager want from a number 9, and I think the brief is to almost be the best of Diaz, Nunez and Jota when they played the position last year. And I think for an hour, I think you get to see him tire, but I think for an hour he absolutely nailed that.
He's big. We knew he was big, but he plays big. He's fast. We'd heard he was fast. He is fast. He's got a fantastic close touch, and you can see his mind working, and you can see that players like playing with him. I think we've said about his direct replacement over the past few years that if Darwin had just been a bit more normal, if he'd just been able to just be a bit more percentage about various things, we could have won more as a club. Basically, he could have done more, we could have won more, and so I think that seems to be what we're looking at here. The reason I had thought he was a project is because of I think until Eintracht sell. The lad to City whose name escapes me, Marmoush. He was kind of, Ekitike was sort of the creator and almost second fiddle in terms of public perception, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think he was the junior partner of that partnership. And so I think that when I have got an Eintracht Frankfurt supporting friend who's been on the show, and so when I've asked them what he thought of Ekitike, it was very much like I think he possibly needs another year. But then in the months after Marmoush is gone, I think that he's really shown that he can be various different things, which is a really good thing for a striker to be. And we will, I guess we don't quite know yet what Liverpool want him to be. There's the looming shadow of Isak, of course, which is another extremely exciting thing. So what happens then? But I think if we are going into this campaign with Ekitike as the number 9, you can really. It just the shape was so good. I thought the shape was absolutely fantastic of having that kind of normal number 9 being on the edge of the box or dropping deep and working hard and doing all of those things. And the goal. I mean, I know I've talked about it once, but it was one of them where you can see what he's trying to do, and I feel like as a viewer that's a positive. You can kind of see that he's the chance isn't on. And then he moves his feet, and the chance is on. And then he just does the really nice logical thing. And I love goals that look like they're too slow. Right in the corner, and Henderson looks crap on the replay, but he's not.
He scored that goal loads of times. When you look at the highlights, he scored pretty much that exact same goal. And I was really disappointed second half when he gets it out of his feet, and he's basically in the exact same position. But I don't think he wanted to be greedy because he'd missed a couple. But that is something that he does, almost like a bit of a trademark for him.
There was that one, there was that one, and then the one he skies, and then obviously Salah misses as well. We did have some really good opportunities in that second half, didn't we? But as I say, I think that his link-up play, especially with Wirtz, who I'll just touch on slightly as well, is fantastic. I mean, Wirtz, he's sort of plays like a creative centre midfielder on the edge of the box. How do you do that? If you think about how good your touch basically just has to be there because you're never going to look at your feet. Your balance, his balance is incredible. His balance is incredible, and those two things are enough for most footballers. But they're like a given because his brain, to be able to play as a centre mid on the edge of the box, your brain has to be so good, and you can't be looking anywhere else. The vision. That's what I think sort of sets him at this elite level. I don't think I've ever seen a Liverpool player that can do that. And you're sort of thinking about the people that you think about is like Modric. It's not exactly the same sort of position and player, but that's the kind of like the company that I'm thinking about when I think about where he is.
I was watching it with John Milburn, and Milburn reminds me of a piece of classic 80s commentary on Liverpool, the game where Kenny bends it into the top corner against Arsenal. You remember if you've seen it, you'll remember it.
Yeah.
The yellow kit, and on the commentary, I think it's Barry Davis. He says, "This Liverpool team, they see angles other teams just don't appreciate." That's the line. This Liverpool team, they see angles other teams just don't appreciate. Yeah. And then Kenny gets it out from under his feet and puts it top corner, bends it round someone, and that was what we would see. It came into John's head because of Wirtz, because he is already. You can see him. He is seeing angles other teams just can't appreciate.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I had it in my head it was Motson, but you may be right with Barry
Davis.
You're probably right.
One of the big two.
I'll go away and check. But no, I think that makes loads of sense. I think when Andy jumped in before, it was what I was about to say as well. Like, you've seen that goal, which gives you a lot of hope that he can replicate that. When you watch him score that, he doesn't look up. He does not look up. He knows exactly where the goal is. So it's back to, he scored that goal lots of times before. It's just going through almost the kind of the routine of, this comes into me. I take a touch and then I was going to say ping it. Adam's right. It doesn't go in at a massively kind of great pace. But the execution of it and where he puts it makes it really, really difficult for any goalkeeper to do anything about it. I said before, coming at the tender age of 23, 23 is not that young anymore for footballers, but he's coming from a different country, so you think, well, it might take him a little bit of time, and it still might, because that's one game. And other people have had good Charity Shields before and then maybe not gone on to have a great career, but the signs are there that he looks like a footballer that you can rely on to be able to be involved in the build-up a little bit more than you could with Nunes, when he's comfortable with it, getting it back to goal, he can pop it off and stuff. I think he's got the clever movements. I think, again, you look at his goals, in Germany, he was able to be quite smart with his movement, where he just pull off to the left-hand side, almost blindside the defenders and go in behind them. And in Florian Wirtz, he's got the guy who can provide the bullets for him time and time again. And he's not the only one. You know, looking at that from four, if you like, I think Gakpo was the one maybe he was struggling a little bit to get too much from his performance, although he has had a good pre-season, to be fair. Maybe you described him, Neil, as almost looking ready to take on a league season.
I think it's funny yesterday in that I was most disappointed in the round, all phases for both of them really, by Gakpo and Szoboszlai, who I think have both had really strong pre-seasons, but all of a sudden, I don't know quite what it was, they weren't quite able to impact as they had been doing week in, week out in the pre-season games that we've been watching.
I think they've looked fittest in pre-season. So
yeah,
maybe
I thought Gakpo's performance.
Yeah,
he looked the most lethargic and sluggish.
Yeah,
he's looked the sharpest in pre-season.
Yeah, but again, you don't want to go too hard. I mean, listen, you know, I don't think Salah has his best game. Let's be clear. He struggles to get involved in the first half, but you know, with Salah at some point it will just change. And again, it's back to everyone's working their way towards something. But I think there were those performances that just, you know, the Curtis Jones Szoboszlai thing, middle of the park for me, didn't really work. I don't think you'd see that often, being honest, if everyone's fit. I think, you know, obviously McAllister will be one of the first names on the sheet, you'd imagine, most weeks. Same with Gravenberch as well. So Liverpool had to do something yesterday that was maybe aligned with what they might be thinking ahead of Bournemouth, because Gravenberch's not going to be there, we know that. And McAllister's working his way back from a couple of niggles, which have, you know, just kind of, I think, bled from last season into the pre-season so far. So there's a little bit to do there fitness-wise, but they have got 5 days now where the manager can just make a few little tweaks. You know, the system thing, it will keep coming up whilst opponents are getting that much space. Sometimes as well, you have got to give the opponent credit. You know, they're good on that right-hand side. You know, Munoz is a very, very useful footballer. Sarr's a useful footballer. Wharton's pulling that side as well. Great midfielder. So, yes, I think you can beat Liverpool over the head a little bit for when they're getting exposed, but also I think you've got to give credit to the opposition. They were finding weaknesses and they were doing it really, really well. I've no doubt come next Friday it will look a lot different, but it does give the manager food for thought. There are some times across pre-season where it's looked a little bit open at times, but he's not a silly man. He'll be very, very aware of that, and I'm sure they're working towards it with Bournemouth on the horizon.
Firstly, on Wirtz, there's been a debate recently of I think it's like a content creation thing amongst footballers. What's the most difficult position to play in the pitch? And I think there's a serious argument that it's the position that Wirtz plays, because you're picking up the ball and players can be coming at you from any angle to nick it off you. And the number of times where Wirtz just retains it, wins a foul, pops it off, is so invaluable to get you 10, 15 yards up the pitch in an area where a lot of the time when the ball goes into that position or that player, it gets lost. And that's the nature of just taking risks in football. His first touch and game intelligence is just sensational. But the point that Ian makes about the midfield not working, I completely agree with, and I think there's going to be a little bit of adaptation this season with Wirtz playing that position compared to Szoboszlai, because it's a completely different set of instructions to follow if you're playing in the midfield too with Szoboszlai in front of you than with Wirtz in front of you. Now, I'm so glad we signed Florian Wirtz. I think he's fantastic. I think he's infinitely better on the ball and more creative than Dominic Szoboszlai, but the nature of Szoboszlai is that he works hard, he runs and he covers ground. And I felt that yesterday, and I love Curtis Jones, I think he retains the ball really well, I think he's neat and tidy, but I thought the two midfielders just didn't really get close enough to Palace. I thought Palace's midfield was excellent. I think Adam Wharton's probably the best player on the pitch, certainly for Palace, as is one-touch play. It's not just keeping it safe. He plays Sarr through for the second goal. He's a really, really intelligent footballer, does sort of a similar job to Wirtz does for us, but just a little bit further back in the pitch. And then you've got Kamada and Hughes as your runners. And I thought, even though the possession shows that we had 59%, and maybe had more control of the game than them, I think that's to do with the fact that Palace like to get it and move it quickly, get it out wide.
It's also a first half, second half thing. I think what you're describing is a first half, second half thing, in that I thought that Wharton was second half best player on the pitch. I think first half he can't get in the game. I think Palace tweak a couple of things second half. I think, you know, Glasner's a good manager, clever manager. It's worth having some respect for that. But I also think that their set way, this is how we play, this is how we play, this is how we play. You know, all these players are played together. And I thought Andy's second half, you could sort of see the benefit of the fact that they've gone through that journey all the way together. When Liverpool go to a shape that they've very rarely played, with players in it who, you know, are at least a couple of new guys on the pitch, and they just left themselves without any options. And I thought that, I think that Palace, you know, ultimately I came away from it feeling like Palace deserved to lift the trophy, given the fact that in the last 30 minutes of the game, they were just simply the better side.
Yeah, Wharton's first half performance and second half are different. He's more influential second half, but when we've got a little bit more pressure on them first half, he's the one that's popping it off, giving a little bit of space.
They did play it around as in the first half a few times. It wasn't just the second half.
And he's absolutely crucial to that. I think he's a fantastic footballer. I think for us, it's just a case of getting that right, getting those spaces right between Wirtz and the midfield too. Obviously, they hurt us in different ways. They're a team with such an identity, Palace. It's so much about the fullbacks. It's so much about getting the ball out to them in space. And when we've got Frimpong and we've got Kirkes bombing up the pitch, as you want them to do, there will be times where they pick us off. And there's a couple of times I expect Kirkes to stop the cross a little bit better. And Munoz had a little bit too much joy, but I do think Kirkes overall has a good game. They just pick their moments really, really well. They know what they've got. They've got pacey players up front. They've got power in Mateta. They've got fantastic footballers in midfield, and it's pop it off, and in behind as quick as you can. And that maybe shows that they only had 40% possession, but they were very, very effective with it. And they're a good team, and we're going to go there in September, and it's going to be a really, really tough game. And hopefully we can look at that yesterday, learn from it, and tweak a little bit. But they're a very, very good team and an exciting team. And I think they're better than the 12th team in the league, to be honest.
I think they are as well. And I think the second half of last season, the 2/3 of the season, and including winning the cup, I think the underlying numbers on that as well as them about sort of 6th or 7th best team in the country for that run.
Unbeaten in the last 8 as well, aren't they? Including the FA Cup final. So
it's interesting that
really strongly.
Started poor, didn't he?
Yeah, they're not a team that plays at Wembley very often, but I think it suits them.
Yeah.
And sort of Selhurst Park doesn't, in a way.
Yeah, I think they almost could do with the now classic legendary line of the big pitch.
The big pitch.
The big pitch.
Challenge for them is keeping players, though. You know, we mentioned Wharton there. You know, what a player he is, by the way. Absolutely outstanding. Every time I see him, you're massively impressed. But you know, there's rumours about Mateta, there's rumours about Eze as well. So they could still look very different come September.
They're like a classic sort of. They're a classic cup team, aren't they, in a way, which is a mad thing to say about a team who hadn't won a trophy in 110 years or whatever it was, but they are a moment's team. In 90 minutes, they will give any team in the league problems. They might come unstuck against Wolves at home or fixtures like that, and that's why they end up with the points total they have, but they will give anyone a game, especially at home.
I want to talk about Frimpong, Ian. I think there's the goal, and obviously he's angling it towards the back post, or you can even see he's almost looking across the line as he's doing it. He's not looking at dinking him. But the point is, he does brilliantly to get to the byline. He stands him up, and says, "See you later on. Here I go." And I think that throughout the game, going both ways, I felt there was a lot to be excited about. I think he impresses.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, he's loads of fun to watch. I think he'll be someone that Liverpool fans take to their heart pretty quickly. Just the way he plays the game, the way he is on the pitch. You know, you see it in the celebration and stuff. I think he's someone that people will warm to immediately, if not already. But yeah, I thought he was good. I think both fullbacks do okay. I think I've seen Kirkes get a little bit of stick, and I know a lot was coming down that side. And maybe there is the thing where he sometimes can just dive in a little bit. But to be working on stuff with him like that, I mean, he's 21 years of age, Kirkes, so I think you've got to be a little bit conscious of that. But yeah, Frimpong, I think the interesting thing, you know, I thought the manager's comments going into the game about maybe using him in that, you know, slightly further, higher up the pitch position once Salah departs for AFCON was interesting. I think you've always got to have in your mind, though, where Conor Bradley is with his fitness. You know, as much as I like Conor Bradley as a footballer, you know, again, he's not available yesterday. Neither's Joe Gomez. So, you know, it might be that Frimpong just has to play a lot of the time at fullback because, you know, the options aren't there. So, I think the point the manager was trying to make was, if you had to play him further forward, he's capable. He's more than capable. He crosses it really well. Probably better than I really kind of appreciated. You know, I've not seen a ton of him. I've seen little bits and stuff, but I've seen him on this pre-season where he is putting in really, really dangerous balls. And obviously the thing that is just most apparent is that he is absolutely rapid, like you would not believe. But in the sense where that's great going forward, but the amount of situations that can bail you out of going the other way as well, where he's got the ability, and you've seen it right across pre-season, where he is just able to get back in and cover a multitude of sins. So yeah, really impressive from him, I thought.
I liked his tenacity.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought, as he has just said, I thought he was constantly in the right place, and that is something that I thought in my head, I was mentally comparing it to Trent, and I never particularly was bought into the entire slating of Trent's defending. But you could see that sometimes he was slightly in the wrong place, and I didn't think that about Frimpong yesterday. I thought he was, despite the fact that he's been herring upfield, that 2 minutes previously, he's there. He's when a cross comes across the box, he is in exactly the right place to work as part of a defensive unit. So I've got no concerns about him defensively.
But the willingness to get back in as well, and I think you could level that at Trent, where there wasn't always the willingness to put yourself back into the situation that you need to be in to help out your teammates. I've seen none of that from Frimpong, and yes, it's early days, but there's almost that desire. If I'm upfield, I'm going to make sure that I'm back in that position as quick as I can to make sure I'm covering other teammates and covering my position. So I think that just, for me, there's loads in that where there's just this like kind of want to be in the right place,
isn't it? Yeah, that is tenacity, and I think that we've. When we said what we wanted from this season, we wanted pace, didn't we? When it came to the crunch against PSG and other really good teams, we looked a little bit ponderous. Trent was a funny player, wasn't he? Really, at right back, you've never seen anything like it. And Robertson's looking his age, so that's kind of what we've been we've been bought into. And I think absolutely 10 out of 10 in terms of what we seem to have got there from Frimpong. And I sort of on the other side, if you're going to talk about Kirkes, we thought we were getting. I think we've got a load of gnarl there. We've got a gnarly player. But yeah, there's a couple of things which I sort of was a bit surprised. I didn't think he seemed that quick. But yeah, he's against a quick player. So
two quick players,
and he loses a couple of running races in the first half, and there was at times just after the start of the second half where where I was watching it sort of said I might think about bringing Robertson on because Robertson, despite everything, brings energy, doesn't he? His age and everything, but he comes on. I'm not sure if it actually happens. In fact, one of the main things about this game is I don't think any of our subs make us better in the end. I think Endo comes on and is a bit rubbish.
We've been rightly, I think, critical of the Szoboszlai-Jones centre midfield partnership, but as soon as it stops and it becomes Endo McAllister, it gets worse.
I thought Jones was good.
Yeah.
I thought Jones was pretty good, really. And I thought, and until I heard other people started talking about it being the Ekitike going off, the main thing that I had in my head was, it doesn't look very good now Jones is.
That's fair. Well, the two things to happen at once.
I know, and sort of that was the main one in my mind. I mean, the simple fact is that it felt like a long game. The first half lasted 3 hours, which was unfair. And Liverpool looked tired, and then their substitutes didn't improve. Our substitutes didn't improve us. So that was how it looked, and in terms of the fullbacks as well. It sort of you can see where we're heading, but it's maybe not quite there yet on that side.
I think that the Palace proposition, first and foremost, Andy, everyone writes it down as 3-5-2. You were in the ground yesterday, 3-4-3. But one of the things that you actually get to see is it's not symmetrical. Sarr plays the right-hand side position very differently to how Eze plays. Yesterday, I think, was a really good example of, actually, they're quite happy for Tyrick Mitchell to almost just play as a left-back, as long as Munoz is playing like a right mid. And I thought you saw that the way Liverpool sort of dealt with that as well. And where I've got a bit of sympathy for Kirkes yesterday is he actually just doesn't even get to play left-back entirely as he will. Gakpo's coming with Munoz, so Gakpo is not on the same line for Liverpool as Salah. That's how they decided to deal with it. I'm sure you could see this on the pitch, but what I think then becomes difficult is that, certainly in defensive play, and I wonder if this does then impact on Van Dijk, especially with the illness, and if Liverpool have been working on something and he's not been able to be part of it. But you end up in this slightly odd situation where the entirety of that side of the pitch, in terms of its defensive structure, is completely different to what we did at least most of the time last season. And
a lot of the time last season we've got Luis Diaz on the left hand side, who was very good at getting back in and getting stuck in and helping out whoever was playing left back for us. Munoz is such a unique footballer in how he plays and how they play him and how they get the best out of him, and I think there is an extent to which Liverpool say we can't just focus our left back, Kirkes in yesterday's instance, on just mitigating his threat. We actually have to play a little bit ourselves. We actually have to use Kirkes' ability going forward ourselves. And if the ball gets turned over and it's pinged out to the right hand side, then we have to suffer. Van Dijk has to get over and we have to just deal with the situation. And I think it would almost have helped a little bit yesterday if Jeremy Frimpong was at left back, because we could have done with that recovery pace of him getting back in and dealing with those situations against Munoz a little bit better. I think with Frimpong, he's obviously up against a very good player yesterday and does very well against Eze. He's one of the best wingers in the league. But there was a bit of a narrative around him, I think, because he was very much a system player, in inverted commas, at Leverkusen, where they used him in a certain position to get the best out of him. He maybe didn't have to be amazing defensively because he had 3 behind him. And I think that created a little bit of a narrative that he isn't good defensively. But every time he gets back in yesterday, he makes a tackle. There's one really good one where Szoboszlai misses it. I think it's on Kamada, or is it on Eze in the box first half? There's another time where he gets back in. I think it's straight after our second goal. Again, the situation looks a little bit hairy, but he's back in, but he makes the tackle as well. And I think people who want to overcomplicate football a little bit like to make it out as if that recovery pace isn't as important and you need like this, that and the other, all these other traits. But it's so important to be able to get back in, and it allows us to play in such a different way. And I was really impressed with him. I think Bradley has similar levels of recovery pace as well, so I think we're sorted in that position. On Kirkes, I've seen a lot of people say that he maybe didn't have his best game yesterday. I was personally really impressed in the ground. I watched a little bit of it back. I thought he did quite well. The first thing that came to my mind was he's a little bit Alberto Moreno with a brain. And Alberto Moreno with a brain would have been a fantastic footballer because he had loads of discernible qualities. He had pace, he had tenacity, he tackled quite well. And I think yesterday you just see him a little bit exposed because of how they play, because we decide to cheat a little bit on that side and decide, well, we can't just let them dictate how we play. I think you're going to see some good Kirkes performances this season.
Mention there Van Dijk. And I think the best thing to say about the game is that it was odd. The first thing that sort of struck me was he was involved. I can't quite remember ever seeing him be quite as front-footed, and to the extent that it almost ended up in midfield at times. You know, often Van Dijk, everything else happens around, and he steps in, he reads the play brilliantly. As I say, it was very, very odd. I don't know if it's because of him, illness, and instruction that got out of hand. No Gravenberg, no Robertson. I don't know, but it was amongst the oddest performances I think he's ever thrown in whilst playing for Liverpool.
Yeah, I said before, you know, you can kind of be kind in these situations or maybe a little bit harsh, but I think, you know, given the levels he's been at for God knows how many years now, then you just maybe just give him the benefit of the doubt and say it's one of those things where I don't know how bad the illness has been, only he will know that could have impacted on him in terms of prep and stuff, and then you come in and all of a sudden it's a hot day and Palace, they're dragging you all over the place because they're a good team and he's having to step in a little bit more. As you said, the midfield's not quite where Liverpool probably want it in terms of personnel, new left back and stuff, so there's a few different things there that maybe played into it, but it's fair to say you don't usually see him make those type of mistakes. I can't really recall him giving away a penalty in those kind of circumstances where it's just almost a bit of a lazy leg that he leaves out, and there's absolutely no need to make the challenge. The lad's going nowhere, he's just inside the box and you feel like
sideways.
Yeah, going sideways, and it's a situation that looks completely under control, so it just felt a little bit careless, but you'd have to say you wouldn't expect them in the heat of battle come Friday and beyond for him to be doing things like that. I think it might just be one of those where, as I said before, people are working their way towards something and you just give them the benefit of doubt. But yeah, the thing for the second goal, when you see it back, it just looks a bit mad, to be honest. And again, you don't expect a player of that ability and that standing to be kind of dragged in that way when he steps out and obviously no one else has gone, and it just looks a bit bizarre. And again, he's up against a really pacey player who exposes it and tucks the finish away really nicely past Alisson, who I thought had a really good game. So yeah, one of those things. But Van Dijk's comments afterwards just suggested that he hasn't enjoyed the last couple of visits to Wembley, and people of that nature who are born winners, who have a certain standard and a certain level that they hit more often than not, it's probably fired them up even more going into the season.
As a bit of a Virgil correspondent, obsessive, I think that there is something about his pre-season, early season where he does sometimes look a bit unusual. I think he gives away a pen at Craven Cottage about 2-3 seasons ago. Yeah. Which is a bit of a weird one.
No, it is.
First game of the season.
It's another one that's really just quite innocuous.
Yeah, well, it was when he said lazy leg that I thought about it. And
it's a 2-2, isn't it? I think it's one of the
really annoying, and really set the tone for that season. So yeah, I do think that he's got levels to go up, and I do expect him to just turn his dial up again. And I've said this on shows anyway this week, because that's what we've seen. He can't keep doing it forever. At some point, he won't be able to, but I do think he sort of does he's taken his foot off the gas when we've won it last season, and it stayed sort of off the gas, and he does need to start stepping it up, and he will. As I said before, I just sort of think there was something that he felt like he needed to sort yesterday, and I don't know what exactly that was. Neil's just said it could have been Gravenberch not being there. In my head, it was sort of the needing to do a little bit more with Kirkes there as opposed to with Robertson there. So I don't know what it was, but I anticipate him being absolutely fine, to be honest, and it will just be a case of them coming together as a unit. It's the first time they've played together in a competitive fixture, so. I wouldn't be surprised if it still looks a little bit rickety in these first couple of games, which is not ideal because they're all going to be tough games. But I think it will be one of them where we'll have it boxed off in a month and everything will be looking good.
I think on the penalty, it comes as a direct aftermath from the one where Mateta's put through and Alisson actually makes a really good intervention, and we don't quite deal with it after that. So I don't know if there was a bit of
Canales really poor. He just needs to put that out.
Yeah, I don't know if there's just a bit of collective panic because we've just conceded a big chance and we just need to get the ball out and regroup, but we never get to regroup, and it's not like you expect Van Dijk to be the one that then panics and puts a tackle in that he doesn't need to put in, but it is ultimately what happens. And I just do wonder on some of those players, it's as to where they see the Charity Shield in terms of pre-season versus competitive game. I mean, the answer is somewhere in the middle, but how far to one side is it? Because in a competitive game, you don't overly exert yourself. You don't maybe put the tackle in that might mean you're injured for the next week. And it's about sort of, learning things and trying different things and making your mistakes. And I thought I saw that from a couple of our players yesterday, where if that's Bournemouth next week, I think you see 10-15% more from them, and that's not calling into question their mentality. That's just that this game is nowhere near as important as next week is, and if we get the same sort of lethargic performance from a couple of players next week, then I'll be worried, but I can't see it.
Okay, Pens, terrible. Didn't like the order to takers.
Yeah,
I'll be dead honest. I don't like the order to takers. I think I think that there's genuine, like, a lot of intelligence can go into the order that you have your penalty takers, and I'm not into Salah first, not because I don't like Salah taking penalties. I'm fine with Salah taking penalties. I'm not going to be dramatic about it. But Salah's like a Dijk penalty taker, where it's all about. For me, it's all about that mentality of I'm being given this opportunity and I will stick the ball into the back of the net. I think you want your best technical taker on 1, you want your ballsiest taker on 4, and then you work out the other bit. You want your most pressure guy on 5 because it could well come to that. And you know what I mean? I was like Dijk out on the 4th pen. I thought it makes tons of sense because the pressure's going to be on pen 4. But
he's changed his run up a bit, Salah. He constantly changes things, and that's I think he's like Neo in the Matrix. Sometimes, isn't he? At the start of every season, he's learned a new trick, or he's got a slightly different look on his face or something. And that's how he works. He's constantly adapting, and I do think there's something odd about the run up that he's done twice in a row, missed both pens. Terrible pens. So yeah, there is something there. I am one of those Salah pen doubters, but I'm absolutely fine with him carrying on being on pens in the round. I am worried. I'm just a naturally worried person probably, but he does worry me a bit. But compared to Milner, obviously, or Gerrard, it's nice to have one of them that is an absolutely sure thing. I think that I'd like us to win a penalty shootout soon.
Yes.
We had a...
We're going to need to win one at some point this season.
We had a run for years where we never lost one.
Yeah.
And I really liked that. It felt inevitable. And there is something in it that, it used to just be sort of thought of as just a mental thing, and it's not. There is a load of technique there, but there is a mental aspect, and I think that's what you're getting at, Neil, with your order of takers. I heard the post-match pint, and I thought you and Johnny and George talked about it really, really well. I just sort of disliked all sorts of things about it. I would have had Virgil on a pen because I loved his penalty in the League Cup final, and I never have any doubts that he certainly would have been willing to step up and take one. So I wouldn't have had Elliott on one. I think that I would definitely have Alexis McAllister on one, but as you say, the order there is wrong, and I'd have him. I'd maybe have him on the first pen, as you said. I'm sort of just repeating things that you say now. It's just. There's something off, I think, in our approach, and I think that the team behind the team, Slot and his backroom staff. I hope they are looking at it and taking it seriously, and not just kind of thinking, it's we'll leave it up to the players' technique, and it doesn't really matter the dice land where they land, because there is those small percentages at the top end of football. There will be, another team will be taking it seriously, and that might make a difference. Because I was expecting us to lose this penalty shootout because Alisson's not very good at saving pens, and it's essentially, I think that is, maybe that plays a part of it, because I always think I love Alisson, but I think that he feels like that isn't one of the main things that he does. He's not got a great record of saving pens, and it was fairly typical Ali in goal for penalty shootout performance yesterday, where he kind of goes the right way, but it's almost like he's waiting for them to hit it, and then he's going to go. So the one he saves, he sort of does wait for him to hit it, doesn't he? And that's goes in his favour. But yeah, so
he's almost unlucky with Devaney's in a way. It's beautifully struck, the Devaney penalty, but Alisson's really close to it, considering how well struck it is.
Hell of a pen,
it's a great pen. It's probably the best pen of all 10.
You wonder how much.
I'd have put the Georgian lad in. I think just to have just it's the Charity Shield. Let's have a look at him. But I would always do that sort of mad thing that managers don't generally do. There's just things you can do around penalty shootouts that I think we need to be a little bit smarter at and be more serious about.
On the order with the pens, though, you wonder sometimes, and I know the manager's the manager, but he might be going to some of the players and just saying, listen, where do you fancy taking one? You've got to be able to see the right frame of mind.
So Harvey wants a big moment, doesn't he, as well?
And I get the Van Dijk thing because of the technique, and we've all seen him take pens in pressure moments before, but you would also think attacking midfielders should be quite high in the queue for taking penalties. So, it's a really poor one by Elliott, but, attacking midfielders and forwards should be almost knocking on the door saying, I want one of the first fucking 5, by the way. That's my job, is to put the ball in the back of the net. I always remember Shearer saying that he wanted the first one because he was confident that he'd get the team off the mark straight away. So I can understand Salah wanting to be that guy that just gets everyone off the mark. And the 5th one, it doesn't always get to that guy. It's important to say that.
That's why I would say you put your pressure taker on the 4th.
So I totally get your point on the 4th one. But having done what he did against Bilbao, I fancied Salah to not do the same thing again. I mean, why wouldn't you? The level of footballer he is. I know some people find his pens a little bit uncomfortable, and I'm not saying those people are wrong, because sometimes I'm not always that confident, but his record is really good. His record is really good. So this idea of saying to him, you're not taking any more, mate, I just don't know whether that'll be a
I think he scores every pen last season as well, by the way.
Yeah, that'd be a tough conversation for them to have that, given his kind of his rate is really high, and there's not many who score every single one. But I do take the point sometimes. Maybe the run up or the kind of the execution of it might not always leave people feeling entirely comfortable. But listen, it is what it is. I'm sure they'll be working on that. And if there is another big moment this season, like Champions League and stuff, you'd hope it would look a little bit different.
I do think penalties just don't really suit Alisson's style of goalkeeping generally. I think what Alisson's great at is his intelligence of understanding where how a situation is developing, how quickly a player is going to have to take a shot, how the timing of coming out to close it down, and then in a penalty situation where the taker is in all the control, essentially, it maybe doesn't suit him quite as much. I think he does the right thing for the Devaney one, because he looks at Devaney and it's a kid who's young, hasn't got much experience, and is probably just going to run up and try and put it in the corner. Whereas with an Eze, he's maybe a little bit more arrogant and is going to wait for the keeper to move, a little bit more confident, I suppose is a better word. And he does really well for the Eze one, but the other two, aside from Devaney's, he doesn't really get anywhere near. Although there's the one that hits the bar. What happens with that? I've not seen it back. Hits the bar, hits Alisson, or does he tip it onto the bar? I'm not entirely sure.
No, it just hits the bar.
Just hits the bar.
It just misses him.
And the other thing is on Salah, I remember actually last time, I think it's 22-23, he misses 2 penalties in a row where he doesn't hit the target. It's Bournemouth and Arsenal, and everyone's saying, get Salah off penalties. And then he's taken 24 since that. He's scored 21, and one of the ones he missed, he put the rebound in. So that's 87.5% conversion rate, which is higher than the vast majority of takers, certainly in the league, but definitely around the world. And there's almost a part of me which thinks that maybe in a pre-season game and in a Charity Shield situation where the pressure isn't on that much, is Salah just sort of thinking like, I'm just going to try and put this even further into the corner to see if I can do it, and actually when I'm on the pitch and the pressure's on a little bit, I'll maybe be a bit safer when it comes to a league game. I've no doubt the next one he takes he'll score.
But it's also
news here, haven't you?
No, it's not news.
Okay.
Andy's texted me, he's producing. He sadly doesn't have a microphone in front of him. Alisson Becker has the highest save percentage from penalties in the Premier League.
No way.
Which is dead interesting, because I think it's not dissimilar to the Salah thing in that you do have this thing in the back of your mind going, I'm not sure about Alisson from pens. That's because he does some orthodox stuff, I think, in the same way that Salah, when you look at the numbers, scores loads of them with Alisson. Highest save percentage.
Kelleher always seemed like the pen saver.
Well, but I think that's in league football,
yeah.
not necessarily in a shootout where
I thought you had transfer news there.
No, sorry, there's a little bit. I'm going to come on to that in a minute or two. So yeah, there is a teeny bit of transfer news. So I'll come back around onto it. I just want to, Ian, for me, the bench yesterday and the use of the bench yesterday just reiterates the need for attacking options.
Yeah.
He chooses not to turn to Rio or to Doak. He doesn't want to pull Gakpo inside and play him central. That was an option that could have been open to him when he wants to take Ekitike off, but he doesn't want to do it. I think for me, it just reiterates the need that they genuinely could do with two. For me, this is not one, and yesterday's a great live example as to why Liverpool need to go forward with 5 forwards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can simultaneously be delighted with the business so far, but also think at the minute they are just a couple short of where they need to be. And in terms of the subs, so there's 9 subs on there yesterday. Only chooses to make 4, which I thought was interesting in a friendly. Of those 9. And obviously there's a couple of lads missing. We know why. Gomez, Bradley injured. Gravenberch couldn't be there because of the birth of his child. You're always going to be missing some players. That's just the nature of football. But of those 9, 3 of them are. There's a lot of mood music behind those 3 that they might go, and that's Chiesa, Elliott, and Doak.
Yeah.
So if you do lose those 3 as well, it does feel like you will be depleting yourself significantly unless there's at least another 2 or 3, maybe 4 coming in. I think that might be unlikely to get 4 in, but maybe 2 or 3. And of the rest of those players, 2 of them are kids. Trainioni and Rio Mengamoa, the babies. So, you understand there'll be times where maybe you can dip them in, but they will have to look after them. They will have to look after them to the point where you can't just be throwing them in willy-nilly. It will be case by case, game by game type of thing. So it does lead you down the path of, yes, Liverpool have been great in the market this season, but they just need to start to make some moves. And I'm interested to get your views on it, guys. Whether you'd shake on, Isak and Mark Gay is 2 that come through, because they both feel like they've got a lot of momentum behind them now. And I'd be delighted with those 2 signings. I think they'd be great additions. But is 2 enough? I know you probably think it's not, Neil, and that's where maybe you could have a conversation about just getting that extra forward in. There's still a little bit of time at the window, but there's not loads of time. I think it might just be they get Isak in, which will be an unbelievable signing. If he can stay fit, my God, he'd be a hell of an addition. And then Mark Gay as well, I think will be a good addition at the back. But then you do think Rio then is probably your 5th option. Is that a little bit too high up the pecking order? He looks unbelievable. The bits you've seen, he looks absolutely unbelievable. But it's back to the point of you've got to dip him in as and when. You've got to be careful with him. So I think it'll be really, really interesting and intriguing to see how the next 3 weeks develop. But it feels like you get those 2, and if they could just get 1 more forward in, they'd be in a brilliant position.
I think you're spot on, Ian, in terms of your analysis of how many we ideally need. I think to be really well stocked in all areas, you need 2 centre halves and 2 forwards, 1 number 9 and 1 who maybe can do a little bit on the left.
I think they'll do that, though.
I will be pleasantly surprised if Liverpool sign 4 more players in this window. I think it's more likely to be 2 or 3. It wouldn't shock me if they do Isak and Gahey and say we're going to do the big money on the lads that we know are going to come in and have the quality, and potentially leave ourselves short if disaster strikes like it does in the season of 2021. I think that when Ekitike comes off yesterday and when our recognised number 9s comes off and we have to go with those 2 number 10s, I don't think that's something we can hang our hat on. It's something we've seen a couple of times. It works at Man City last season, but there's a couple of examples of it not working, and we don't have enough of a body of evidence in competitive football that that's something we can hang our hat on this season. So I think when Ekitike comes off the pitch, you do need to have that just out and out number 9 who can play there. And obviously for various different reasons, we've lost a lot of the players from last season who did that for us. There's even Luis Diaz, obviously Jota, Nunez, even Chiesa towards the end of the season does a little bit of that for us, and it looks like he's going to go as well. So not only have we, do we need number 9s, we need players who can come in and do the number 9 bit when whatever's not working for those number 9s up front. So yeah, I think we'll do Isak. I think we might do Mark Gahey. I would have loved to have done Xavi Simons, who can just come in and sort of play anywhere across the front 3 to a decent standard, but it looks like that's not going to happen. So ideally 2 in each position, but at least 1 in each position.
Yeah, I thought Gahey was really good yesterday, and I'm not necessarily thinking that anything more than Isak and Gahey happens.
What do you want? Do you want more than Isak and Gahey?
I think we probably do need something on the left, to be honest. I think that Arne Slot is relentlessly himself, and I wasn't particularly surprised that Engelmoa didn't come on yesterday. And I think that if he had, then I'd be saying, okay, well, you can see where that might be putting him ahead in the pecking order. But I think there is a very much a pecking order, and I don't think we'll see Engelmoa now probably until the League Cup. So, with that said, and as the lads have just been saying, the players that look like they might be going, you probably do have to just keep evaluating it based on how many of them genuinely do go out the door. We've just got a lot more likely outs than ins, haven't we? Really.
And Shipmacaster's now added to that list.
Yeah, yeah. So it's funny because this is what Feyenoord fans said. It'd be funny when Slot wins the league and then sells the entire squad, because that's what he did. It's what his sort of track record is. So yeah, I think deadline day might be busier than normal. But yeah, I think it's a hugely moving feast. But yeah, certainly in terms of attacking numbers, we do need.
Do you think if he gets the 2 in, Isak and Gay, he's having a conversation with one of the 3 that I've just mentioned before, a Doak, an Elliott, a Chiesa, although that one feels like it probably will happen, and just says, listen, you've got to stay till January.
That's what I think.
You've got to stick around till January. I know it's not ideal. Those players will want to go and play football somewhere. They've all probably said it at different times, but you've got to be careful not just to give yourself too much to do and leave yourself a little bit too short. What do you think, Neil?
I think it's possible, but I think it's funny in that I don't think any of the 3 that you've just sort of said there, they now click into the sort of profile of football that he wants. He doesn't bring Doak on yesterday, and I think that there was an argument to have done something there just to have someone who's gonna carry genuine pace behind the other line. Same with
and I'm not even sure at Doak's level. If I'm being honest, I've not seen enough of him to know
I quite like him, but and
I
I think you can definitely see there's a lot of opportunity for Doak to get bits here and there, but the manager's got to want to use him. And I think yesterday, by not using either of the younger players there, it says something. And then I'm not quite sure literally what sort of footballer Arne Slot thinks Harvey Elliott is. So does he actually view Harvey Elliott as an option in the final, what he calls the last line? Does he do that? Because if he doesn't, well, what's the point? If you know what I mean? Like, because you're going to back up Viet with Szoboszlai, you've got those other midfield options. So if that's the case, I just don't think he's going to necessarily use him in that way. And what we're not talking about here in a way is Viet's backup. I think we all understand Viet is like this unbelievable cherry on top of a certain cake, but he needs to have things in front of him. And so I'm just all a little. I'm not sure is my point, because there's no point saying you've asked the lads to stay and you've got the options if the manager won't use them except for in the League Cup. And then, but you do need players to play in the League Cup.
Someone's going to play those games, otherwise it's your first team.
And this to me is like, and I understand it's obviously different yesterday because the game goes a certain way and there's going to be penalties, so you don't take Salah off. That's not my argument here, but do you, even 5 minutes, 10 minutes to go, do you say to Ben Doak, right, what we want for you to do here is to play on the right hand side, stretch them, make the pitch absolutely massive and be a threat going the other way, because at the minute they've just very confidently strode up the pitch once Ekitike's gone off, and I think that is something that they're going to have a plan about, whether it involves Doak or not. But for me, it involves 2 recruits. Isak is one, heavily trailed, but I don't know who the other one is. But I think they need to have someone but there's no point having someone if the manager's not going to pick him.
Yeah.
So this is the key. This is the key thing, and that's what. But as I say, it's an odd situation yesterday because it is a football match that's going to go to penalties. So you're simultaneously also thinking about penalties, and as however much confidence Doak and Rio might have, you wouldn't want to expose them to penalties. You see what I mean? So I think it is a little bit. I don't want to overanalyze from it, but I think it is. There's ways in which it is telling that neither of them do get on the pitch, and if you're Liverpool, you probably want to entirely understand those reasons before you go any further. But all the way through the summer, I've been saying, and part of what Liverpool do so well last season is 5 forwards. You need 5. I think 5 and then a wild card, whether it is Doak or whether it's Rio. 5 and then a wild card, I think, or both behind, I think would be absolutely perfect. And I think that 5, you can't have more than 5. I take your 2 centre-halves point. A lot of that's down to literally what is Joe Gomez and what do they see him as, because I think it's really hard to run with 5 senior centre-backs. Yeah. I think that's just really difficult.
I think the second one would be like a Leone or some
a
project
kid,
where you've lost your project in Quansah, haven't you now?
But he was also one of the 4 last year, Quansah, is what I would say. So you go into 5 with Gomez being in there as well. I think it's hard to do that. But in an ideal world, yes, the thing you're describing is what you do, and you just commit to it wholeheartedly. But you don't. It's hard to say you're going to develop Leone, who's currently getting games of first team football,
and he might get games at Inter Milan if that's where he goes,
or go to another team,
or
get
be
games there.
Konate's injury record's spot on last season, but it hasn't always been, and we're not sure whether that's just luck or whether that was management and fitness and coaching, etc. So Yeah.
All right. I did want to talk about Salah's post on UEFA, but we'll pass over it because I'm conscious of time as we go all the way through now. Other than just to say, it was very interesting indeed the fact that he felt very comfortable to go at UEFA, and also that he chose to target the passive voice. I think that's something that will have resonated with a huge number of people, and I'm very into footballers getting to speak their mind. So yes, more on that. I think on other shows throughout the Anfield Wrap. Do subscribe if you get the opportunity to do so. Thank you very much to Melia for looking after the images, Andy for looking after the pictures, Andy and Adam. I got all the A's there, and Andy and Adam how just completely threw me. Ian as well, another name that starts with a vowel, but we managed to cope all the way through that. It's been the Anfield Wrap this week. See you later on.